So, um, right now, if you're planning a weekend trip to the lake, your weather app probably tells you everything is just perfectly safe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like the water is calm, the wind is low, and you feel like you are totally in control. But thousands of years ago, navigating those exact same waters without first stopping to offer a handful of tobacco was considered basically an absolute death sentence.
Literally a matter of life and death. Yeah.
Right. And today, we're looking at why. We are taking a deep dive into this incredible set of notes and excerpts from a segment called Episode 16, Indigenous Legends, Mishipeshu, the Water Panther.
It's such a fascinating source.
It really is. It was compiled and shared by the folks connected to the Alpine Homestead. And the mission today is to explore this really fascinating intersection. We want to look at how ancient indigenous mythology isn't just, folklore or made-up stories, but actually a profound lens for understanding our modern relationship with the natural world, specifically those deep, unpredictable waters of the Adirondacks and the Great Lakes.
Yeah, and that distinction is super important.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think a lot of people might see the title Water Panther and assume we're just doing, like, a cryptozoology deep dive or telling a spooky campfire story.
Oh, yeah, and it is so much more than a campfire story. I mean, establishing that upfront is vital. If you approach this simply as a spooky myth meant to scare children, you completely miss the genius of it.
Right.
What we're actually looking at here is an incredibly sophisticated ecological framework. This is a system of environmental understanding and situational awareness that predates modern recorded history by thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
It's crucial survival data. But instead of being written down in a textbook or, a nautical chart, it was codified into narrative.
And the focal point of that narrative is a being known in Anishinaabe and related traditions as Mishipeshu, the Water Panther.
Yeah, right, the Water Panther.
So let's start with the physical description we have here in the source, because it is so vivid and, honestly, it's a bit chaotic at first glance.
Chaotic is a good word for it, yeah.
Right. Right. Because Mishipeshu is described as this massive, powerful underwater entity that's basically a chimera. It's part great cat, part serpent or dragon. It's got these thick scales, massive horns, and eyes that are said to literally glow in the deep water.
It's an intensely arresting image. I mean, you're fusing feline agility, reptilian stealth, and these mythological dragon elements into a single apex predator.
And its territory is super specific, too.
Exactly. The legends don't place Mishipeshu in the gentle shallows or, babbling brooks. This entity is said to dwell exclusively in the deepest, darkest parts of the lakes and rivers throughout the Adirondacks and the broader Great Lakes Basin.
Which, okay, that brings me to something I'm genuinely struggling to wrap my head around.
What's that?
Well, I look at this hybrid description, this cat dragon with horns, and it feels, I don't know, incredibly random. Like, if I'm trying to visualize the ultimate terror of deep water, my mind goes to a giant fish.
Sure, like a Jaws situation.
Yeah. A massive sturgeon, maybe a shark, or a giant squid, something that actually belongs in the water. But a feline, I mean, cats notoriously hate water.
They really do.
So is this just a case of combining random, scary traits for shock value? Or is there a reason a water spirit would have the physical characteristics of, like, a lynx or a cougar?
What's fascinating here is that the Anishinaabe weren't just throwing scary animals into a blender to make a monster. Mishipeshu isn't described merely as a monster. It's a dual-natured entity. It's a protector of sacred waters.
A protector, right.
And its physical form perfectly mirrors the physical dynamics of the water itself. Think about how water behaves in those massive, deep basins. A giant fish implies something swimming beneath you, right?
Man, it's just cruising along.
But water doesn't just swim. A serpent represents the slick, fast-moving, invisible undercurrents that can pull you off course without you even noticing.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of it like that.
And the feline aspect. Think about how a sudden squall hits a massive lake.
It doesn't build slowly. It just drops on you.
Exactly that kinetic energy. It's the sheer, unpredictable, explosive power of a great cat pouncing from ambush. One minute the lake is just total glass, and the next, sudden violent winds whip up these whitecaps that look and act like claws tearing at your canoe.
Claws tearing at the boat. That is a terrifying visual.
Right. The water pounces. It strikes. So the physical description of the water panther is a literal visual embodiment of the water's potential energy. It's beautiful, it's awe-inspiring, and it can turn deadly in a fraction of a second.
Wow.
It demands the exact same hypervigilance you would need if you were locked in a room with an apex predator.
So it's not about biological accuracy at all. It's about behavioral accuracy.
Exactly.
It maps the kinetic energy of a storm onto something human beings already intuitively fear. That completely changes how I read this.
It reframes the whole thing.
It really does. And I think that naturally transitions us into how human beings were actually expected to interact with this environment. Because the lore isn't just a bestiary listing what the creature looks like. It's a highly specific behavioral guide.
Because surviving an ecosystem isn't just about identifying the flora and fauna. It's about knowing your place within that space.
Yes.
And recognizing that you are absolutely not the master of it.
And the consequences for forgetting your place are severe. The source notes detail that if the waters, and by extension, Mishipeshu, are disrespected, the creature retaliates.
It doesn't just let it slide.
No, not at all. We're talking about the sudden manifestation of deadly whirlpools, vicious localized currents, or violent storms that seemingly generate out of nowhere to capsize travelers.
And anyone who has spent significant time paddling on lakes like Superior or even deep sections of Champlain knows that this is a physical reality.
Oh, definitely.
The weather can and will flip violently. It often traps boaters who ventured out too far just because the morning looked nice.
Right, it's that complacency trap. You get too comfortable. Yeah. And the traditional preventative measure for this, according to the notes, involves a really specific ritual.
The tobacco offering.
Yeah. Travelers, particularly canoeists navigating known deep spots, were advised to offer tobacco to the water, or at the very least proceed with a heightened state of extreme care and reverence. But here is where I get hung up a bit.
Okay, what's the hang-up?
Well, if I'm in a canoe and the barometric pressure drops and a violent storm is brewing, dropping a handful of crushed leaves into the water seems completely useless, superstitious even. How does a ritual like that actually keep anyone safe on a dangerous lake?
I mean, it seems useless if you only look at the physical mechanics of a leaf floating on the water, sure.
Right.
But if we dive into the psychological mechanics of the ritual, its brilliance becomes immediately apparent. Think about the physical act of making that offering. You cannot paddle and offer tobacco at the same time.
You have to stop.
You have to stop. You have to put your paddle down. You have to quiet your companions. You have to physically center yourself in the canoe, look out at the horizon, and make a deliberate, intentional gesture.
So you're forcing a mandatory pause.
A mandatory, highly focused pause. In that 30 seconds of silence, your senses completely recalibrate.
Wow. Yeah.
You suddenly feel the subtle shift in the wind direction on your face. You notice the temperature dropping. You see the anvil clouds building over the tree line that you were ignoring earlier because you were just too busy chatting and paddling.
The ritual breaks the hypnosis of rhythmic paddling.
Precisely.
That makes so much sense. It actively forces situational awareness. Yeah. So what does this all mean for how the lore was passed down? Is it essentially a psychological tool disguised as a religious practice?
It's a perfect synthesis of both. Oral tradition is an incredibly efficient form of data compression.
Data compression, I love that.
Think about it. If you tell a teenager or a novice paddler, hey, pay attention to the barometric pressure and the subtle cross currents, they might nod, get distracted, and drown.
Yeah, they'll tune you right out.
But if you tell them there is a horned, glowing-eyed panther living in that trench, and if you don't stop, humble yourself, and pay attention, it will reach up and drag you down to the dark. They stay alert.
They're definitely paying attention to that.
Right. The ritual instills a mindset of caution and reverence. It ensures that successive generations never mistake the calmness of the surface for a lack of danger.
You're hacking human psychology to enforce a survival guideline. You fear the monster, so you respect the water.
Exactly.
But the psychological genius of this tobacco ritual didn't just vanish when fiberglass kayaks and outboard motors were invented.
No, not at all.
The source material explores how this legend still physically manifests today. We aren't just talking about birch bark canoes from centuries ago.
The modern sightings and experiences are incredibly telling. The environment hasn't changed, even if our vessels have.
Right. The notes highlight some very specific modern echoes of Mishipeshu. Paddlers and boaters today still report bizarre phenomena. We're talking about massive, unexplained wakes surging across lakes that are otherwise completely dead calm with no other boats around.
Just a huge wave out of nowhere.
Yeah. And people camping along the shorelines reporting 2 glowing orbs breaking the surface of the black water at night. But my favorite detail, and the one that feels the most universal, I think, is that sudden, deep, inexplicable feeling of unease.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
You know that feeling. You're paddling along, having a great time, and suddenly your stomach just drops.
It just bottoms out.
Yeah. You cross an invisible threshold over deep water, and your body just screams that you are completely out of your depth and that you are not alone.
That is your primal instinct breaking through the veneer of modern safety.
Yeah.
Our conscious brains might try to rationalize it away. We tell ourselves it's just a cold pocket of air or a trick of the moonlight on the water. But our central nervous system still recognizes the immense hidden power and the sheer volume of the deep water beneath us.
And what makes this so tangible is that the source anchors these feelings to real local geography. Imagine you're out kayaking on Minerva Lake, or you're taking a small boat onto the deeper expanses of Lake Champlain.
Beautiful spots, but very deep.
Super deep, the water is pitch black, your paddle is slicing through the surface. It's one thing to read about a mythological creature in a library. It's another thing entirely to feel that chill run up your spine when you're staring down into 200 feet of dark water.
Context changes the entire physical experience of a landscape.
It completely changes the vibe. And here's where it gets really interesting. This specific context, this preservation of local lore and the collection of these modern echoes is championed by the Alpine Homestead.
Right, the Alpine Homestead.
Now, for you listening, you might know the Alpine Homestead by their beloved picturesque farmhouse built in the 1850s. And we tend to look at an 1850s homestead and think, wow, that is ancient history. That is the heritage of this land.
We do tend to think that way.
But juxtapose that 170-year timeline with the indigenous stewards of that exact same land. The Anishinaabe and other tribal nations have respected, navigated, and understood the mechanics of these waters for literally thousands and thousands of years.
The scale of that timeline is just staggering. A 170-year-old farmhouse is just a blink in the ecological history of those waters.
Barely a blip.
And what the Alpine Homestead is doing by bringing these specific legends to light is vital. They're attempting to bridge that massive gap in perception.
And it's worth noting that they actually rely on community support to keep doing this. The Alpine Homestead gathers these notes, they produce this content, and host live studio performances, all funded by listeners via PayPal and Venmo donations.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah, it's an entirely grassroots effort to ensure that we don't just view these lakes as flat, passive playgrounds, but that we retain the deep, ancient context of the land.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what these notes from the Alpine Homestead are really offering us is a profound corrective lens for our own behavior.
A corrective lens, I like that.
The legend of Mishipeshu carries an imperative that transcends time, which is move gently and show gratitude when you are out on the water. When you internalize the fact that you're floating over depths that have commanded absolute reverence for millennia, it completely shifts your psychological posture. You move away from an attitude of dominance or entitlement, the idea that the lake is just there for your recreation, and you move toward an attitude of participation.
You aren't just using the water.
Exactly. You are being permitted to travel across it.
Oh, man. Permitted to travel.
That phrasing literally gives me goosebumps. It's a mindset of deep environmental gratitude. It makes you realize that the water is a living, dynamic space that has been guarded and respected since long before the first maps of New York were ever drawn. It shifts you from a conqueror to a guest.
And that shift is something we are desperately losing. When we strip away the narrative of the Water Panther, when we mock the idea of a sacred protector that demands respect, we lose the ritual.
We lose the pause.
We lose the mandatory pause. We lose that built-in, culturally enforced mechanism for humility. And humility is honestly the only thing that keeps you alive when nature decides to remind you of its power. We really do lose that humility.
Yeah.
So let's take a moment to just recap the journey we've been on today. We started by looking at a description that felt like a chaotic fantasy. A horned, glowing-eyed dragon cat lurking in the deep waters of the Adirondacks.
Sounds wild at first.
But by diving past the surface of the source material, we discovered that Mishipeshu is actually a brilliant, data-rich survival mechanism. It is a thousands of years old psychological framework, beautifully designed to enforce environmental gratitude and keep humans alive by instilling a healthy, necessary respect for the raw, unpredictable power of the water.
It reveals that ancient mythology wasn't born out of ignorance at all. It was born out of an intense, intimate, and highly observational relationship with the ecosystem.
Beautifully put. Now, the notes from the Alpine Homestead actually left us with a call to action, and I want to extend that directly to you listening right now. Have you ever been out on the water, maybe on Champlain or Minerva, or even just a deep, dark river near your home, and had an experience that felt entirely unexplainable?
I'm sure a lot of people have.
Oh, I bet. Maybe you saw a strange rogue wake when there was no wind. Maybe the atmosphere suddenly shifted and all the sound dropped out of the air. Or maybe you just felt that deep, instinctual knot in your stomach that told you something ancient was looking back up at you.
That feeling.
The folks at the Alpine Homestead are actively collecting these modern echoes, so whether you drop it in their comments online or share your story the next time you're visiting their 1850s farmhouse, they really want to hear how this ancient environment is still making itself known today.
Because the environment hasn't changed. The water still holds the exact same kinetic energy, only our perception of it has shifted.
Right.
And that leaves us with a final, honestly somewhat unsettling thought to mull over. If ancient legends like Mishipeshu were meticulously designed to instill a healthy fear and a profound respect for nature's power, what happens to our society when we stop telling those stories?
That's a great question.
Think about the gear you pack for a weekend trip. Your sleek fiberglass kayak, your real-time digital GPS weather app, your sonar depth finder. Do these modern technologies actually keep us safer, or do they just give us a false sense of security?
That is the million-dollar question right there.
Okay.
Does a GPS screen make you blind to the horizon?
Precisely. Do these tools insulate us so much that we forget what we are floating on? Do they make us forget that beneath the passive, glossy surface, the deep water still holds the exactly same raw, untamed, and entirely indifferent power it did 5,000 years ago?
Untamed and indifferent.
Yeah. I mean, a depth finder can tell you how far the bottom is, but it absolutely cannot tell you what the water is about to do.
It really makes you question who is actually in control out there. It's something to seriously think about the next time you're standing on the shoreline, getting ready to push off. We hope that you carry that ancient mindset of gratitude, caution, and deep reverence with you next time you're near the water. Look past your reflection on the surface and remember the thousands of years of history and the legendary protectors that reside in the deep. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay humble out there, and we'll catch you next time.